Welcome to Break the Pipeline, brought to you by the law offices of Sauda Johnson PC. I am Sauda Johnson McNeal, the founder and CEO of the firm. I've been an attorney for over 20 years, and I'm licensed in New York and California.
Hi, I'm Naomi Barrera. I am an attorney licensed in the state of New York, and like Sauda, I have also been practicing for over 20 years.
At Break the Pipeline, we dig into the real-life factors that shape children's lives. As attorneys, we analyze all sides, the legal intent and the real-life impact.
From school discipline and child labor to family conflict and mental health, we explore how laws and decisions can influence the path a child takes.
Our mission is to understand what affects kids and how we can help move them forward. This is Break the Pipeline.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Hey, everybody, I'm Sauda Johnson McNeal, the founder and CEO of the law offices of Sauda Johnson PC.
And I am Naomi Barrera. Good to be with everyone again.
This is going to be a really good topic. We're talking about United States immigration and customs enforcement in the schools. Protect or comply.
Yes, so we will be looking at specifically, do schools' legal duty to protect students extend to defending them from immigration enforcement? Or does that duty stop when ICE shows up?
So basically what we're talking about here are both sides. That's what we do at Break the Pipeline. We look at both sides. Whether we agree or not agree with an issue, we're attorneys. We want to look at all the sides. So side one is, what really is the legal duty of a school to protect the child? Okay, so Nay, I'm going to jump into it from the California side. My belief is that in California, schools have a legal duty to protect and supervise students while they're under the school's custody. Okay, before I even get into the law, let's just talk about bottom line. I have a son. I'm dropping him off at the school. You have a duty to protect my child. But when we jump into the legal part of this, well, the education code basically establishes that teachers and administrators, they must exercise reasonable care to prevent foreseeable harm to students. And this duty extends to protecting students from third-party harm. So if someone else comes on campus, you have to protect our children, right? This is while they're at school or engaged in school activities. So California courts have said that there is a special relationship that is formed once a child enters the school's care. The school assumes responsibility for their safety and well-being. So bottom line, California law imposes an affirmative duty on schools to protect, supervise students from foreseeable harm while under their care. Talk to me about New York, Nay.
New York is in a similar place. It says that schools owe students a duty of reasonable supervision based on the state's common law. There's a New York Court of Appeals case that says that schools act in loco parentis, which means in place of parents. The same way that a parent seeks to protect his child from harm, school can be held liable for foreseeable injuries that happen to a student while they are in school. So the question becomes, how far does that loco parentis extend? That's the issue that we're looking at here.
You have two beautiful daughters who go to school in New York. Let's keep it real. Would you take your daughters to school if you didn't think the schools had to protect them?
No, but that's exactly what's happening right now, Sauda, right? There is this fear, parents being in fear that their students are in danger and not being protected. And so they're not sending their kids to school. So in real time, if I even suspected that the school was not going to do right by my children, that any third party can come in and take my children, for instance, why would I send my kid to school?
It would break down the entire education system if every parent stops bringing their child to school. Because at the end of the day, most of us care so much and so deeply about our children that we will keep them home and do what we need to do versus putting them in danger. And so that's really the question now when we talk about federal law. Even when we stay on this duty to protect federally, because we talked about California, you talked about New York, and really the question is it like that in most states? Now, I don't know all states. I'm only a New York and California attorney. But I would argue, yes, that most states have this duty to protect, similar to New York and California. But federally, there really is nothing in the U.S. Constitution that imposes a blanket duty on schools to protect them from harm. Hey, what do you think are the reasons that we could say that a school has a duty under federal law to protect their kids?
Even though U.S. federal courts have not blanketly stated it, case law has established that there is a special relationship that's formed. Kids have to be there for X number of hours during the course of the day. And let's not forget, parents don't have a choice. They have to send their kids to school, because if not, there is the element of truancy and even the police component,
You're
right?
going
If
to
you don't send
jail.
your kid to
You're
school.
going to
So they're
jail. That's
forced,
right.
right? Right. They're forced to send their kids to school. There's a compulsory element to this. That means that there is a special relationship that is formed. And based on that special relationship, there is a duty of care that is imposed.
Right. Absolutely. Right. Because at the end of the day, your child can't just leave. They're not just free to walk out. Like, no, that can't happen. I gave you my child. So temporarily, I have given you authority over my child. They have a duty to protect our children from foreseeable harm. So now when we get into this federal law as it pertains to ICE, right? That's what it's called. United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement. We call it ICE. Let's just break down the basics so people understand how federal and state law works. Federal trumps state.
I think a lot of people may need this point clarified. When there's a conflict that's between federal law and state law, federal law will always supersede. That is just the way the founders created it, so that when there's a conflict, we know which one's going to win out. Two people having 50-50 decision making, at some point, somebody's going to have to be the end decision maker, right? And that's the same thing that happens with the supremacy clause. When there's a conflict that's between federal law and state law, federal law will trump that.
The school's duty to protect, is it just limited to safety and supervision, right? Because we talked about that there is federal implications, even though it doesn't say explicitly that they have to protect. Federally, it's implied that they have to protect. Now we get into ICE enforcement. So they can come in and they have rights to come in and enforce the law, which is about immigration. Nay, you want to speak to that a little bit?
If we take a strict construction of what the supremacy clause means, ICE is under federal law to execute its federal mandate, which is to deport anyone it deems to be an undocumented person. They deem that there are undocumented persons not only in the school system, but outside the school system as well. And per federal law, they have the right to go into the school districts and extract, if you will, people that they deem to be undocumented, including children.
What's the real argument, right? If we're saying that federal law trumps state law, then school staff, they're not law enforcement. They do not have the authority to block ICE. If they come in with these valid judicial warrants, then they can come in. And if there's a student there that is not legally in the United States per the citizenship paperwork, and if they refuse compliance to schools, then they could be dealing with federal penalties or obstruction of maybe justice. What's the argument?
There's this middle ground and this murky area, right? Because as we've previously established, from a federal law perspective, children have the right to feel safe in the school system. We just established that special relationship. So the question is, what is the middle ground? Because we have federal law on one end, and then we have parents need to feel that their children are safe when they're told that they must send their kid to school. Otherwise, they will encounter penalties themselves. So what's the middle ground here?
I don't know about middle ground, but I can tell you the argument. If we're looking at both sides of it, and I'm looking at the federal side, because I was able to tell you how I feel about my son. If I send him to school, I want to know he's protected. And if I think for 1 minute that they're going to let someone like ICE or anyone take him away, then I wouldn't take him to school. But the other side of this is ICE is the law, whether people like it or not. You're not documented to be here legally, then it's a crime. There's people that say we're not okay with people breaking the laws, right? As attorneys, like that's exactly what we took an oath to do, to hold up the law. So if the law says that you're not here legally, then how can you expect schools to break the law? I mean, if a child commits a crime, for example, if a child goes out and kills another child or robs, and then now they're in school and the police come to get them, you can't keep that kid from being arrested. I mean, there's rules that have to be followed, but at the end of the day, they broke the law. So really, what are we arguing here?
But wait, Sauda. But even in that example that you raise, let's say a kid has been accused of a crime. Put the documented status to the side for a second. Even in that instance, the school has to follow certain protections. Even in the instance where a child is being accused of, let's say, murder. Even in that instance, the school has to, there is case law that says that the schools can't just willy-nilly allow law enforcement to come into the school and take the kid or hold them under custody. Even in that scenario, there are rules to be followed. So yes, there's the law.
No,
Yes?
go ahead. No.
No, I'm saying there's the law, and then there's the application of the law in a way that protects the student's rights. And in this instance, the parents' rights, because the parents are concerned for their child's well-being. So there is the
what
law.
about if the parent is not here legally? Do they have rights still? So you basically, I hear what you're saying. Like, right at the end of the day, parental notification and consent. That is very much a requirement under schools. You know, I could speak to California, New York. That is a requirement. But what if the parent is not here legally? Does the school now have to call the parent who's not here legally to tell them about ICE trying to take their child from school? Do they have any rights?
Of course they have rights. The case law has not separated out people that have undocumented status that send their kids to school. There's no caveat excluding those parents' rights. And so, yes, they still have the right to be called because their child, their most prized possession, if you will, is at the school setting that they have to send their kid to, because that is the law. And they're following the law by ensuring that their kid goes to school. So yes, the school should notify them when ICE shows up. I think that's just a minimum. What else do you think we can do here? What's another middle ground that can be taken here, Sauda?
Definitely has to be the judicial warrant from ICE, right? Like that is just a requirement, because at the end of the day, if they don't have an official warrant to come in, then the school should not allow them to be let go.
I would also argue that the schools should contact their own legal counsel to know how to properly address the situation at hand. And arguably, we can say that I should also not disrupt the educational day, if you will, for the other students that are there. The question becomes, how are all these things implemented in real time when it's all overshadowed by fear and the threat of what can happen once that child is removed from the school?
Here's the part that's very important. We talk about the side of the parent. Like, am I going to be taking my kid to school today? Of course I will, because the school's going to protect my child, right? Then you have the side of the parent who's like, no, if someone's here illegally, then by all means let ICE in, because that's the law. I'm for the law. Then you kind of have this other, I don't know if it's a side, because there's always two sides, but there's this third part that says, I hear you on the law, but at the end of the day, if it's my child and I'm in that person's shoes where it's my child, what about this foreseeable harm? If someone goes into ICE custody, let's take a 4-year-old. That puts it into a very different perspective than if we're talking about a 16-year-old. Not that we love our child any less, but by 16 or 17, it's a little bit different how you're going to navigate when you versus talking about a 3-year-old or 4-year-old who haven't even been on this earth that long.
Right.
So now you take this 3-year-old or 4-year-old who may not even be able to speak cognitively, not even fully have everything there to comprehend what's happening. And you hear about all these different things, Naomi. You hear about rumors of abuse, emotional harm, all these things that happen when a child, particularly that young, is taken by ICE. And you're like, okay, I hear you on the law, but nah, I don't want my child to be taken away.
I mean, to that point, where are they being taken to, right? They're being taken to detention centers that, for argument's sake, is just a jail, right? So what do you do with that 4-year-old? We can't separate this conversation from where are they taking these children to? They're being thrown in jails that are not only creating fear and trauma and fear, unending fear, but it's the separation too from their parent. Let's say the parent is not called. Also, too, Sauda, are these children being used as bait to get their parents to come to school?
Probably.
I don't think we can separate that from this conversation, just in light of, remember, all of this is happening in real time as we're discussing this, right? These are real issues that are impacting everyone across the nation. And there's no easy answer here.
No, and it circles back to one of our previous topics in terms of children who do crimes and are in these juvie systems, right? So who's to say that these detention centers are no different than the same exact juvie that these kids who do crimes are being sent to or were being sent to, depending on their age and what they're dealing with, right? So we hear these kind of reports of abuse and neglect. That's why the law is difficult. particularly when you talk about our most vulnerable population, our children. I don't know anybody's politics, but I do believe for the most part that if it were your child, you may not be as on one side or the other. You know what I mean?
I think that's such a valid point, Sauda. It's easy to talk about this in a vacuum, right? When you put yourself in these children's shoes, in these parents' shoes, I think just for a second, people will start to see some of these issues a little bit differently. But when it's, oh, that's happening to those people over there, and I'm not impacted in any way here, it makes for a different perspective. But if you put yourself in the shoes of this 4-year-old, or even the 16-year-old, or even the parent, your perspective is likely to change. And like you said, we don't know, and we're not picking sides here, because as we know, everyone sees the world completely different. I've said that multiple times before.
Facts.
So you know what I mean? So it's not an easy answer. I just hope and pray that in the end, it is the best outcome for everyone involved, including the school administrators, which let's talk about them too for a second. They're nervous themselves. They're parents themselves. They're concerned about doing what needs to be done correctly as well. So we can't separate the staff from the schools as well in this discussion.
No, you can't, because at the end of the day, guess what? They are exposing themselves to liability on both ends, right? Because we open this up with talking about federally what is implied when it comes to the duty of care from a school. But then we talked about ICE and their federal law. So the school administrators, they could be sued on both sides, or they could be in trouble on both sides if not sued. I would not want to be in the shoes of an administrator if there's an ICE raid that happens. I personally think that when you look at both sides, let's at least have some very real protocols in place, right? One, as we already said, make sure that ICE has an actual real warrant to come in, because if they don't, then if you're an admin, do not let those children go. Two, call the parents. I don't care if they are considered undocumented or documented human beings in this country, here legally or not. They're human beings at the end of the day. I'm very clear about that. That's a fact, right? Whether you agree with their legality status or not of being in this country, they're human beings. Call them. Tell them that their child is about to be removed because of ICE. What else, Naomi? What else do you think they should do?
Well, as I mentioned a little while ago, the district should quickly notify their district council to make sure that they are taking the adequate steps, and in the sense to be protected legally as well in terms of their response. And as I mentioned as well, ensure that ICE presence does not disrupt the instruction and intimidate not only the students that they're seeking to remove, but also the students that are in the classroom. Because what is the chilling effect that happens in this classroom, right? Once ICE comes in here, does that mean the next day less children are going to come to school? What is the overall impact and the education in these public schools?
Yeah, I agree, because if it's me, I want the call. Even if I'm not legally in this country, I would still want the call, because I do not want to be separated from my child. So I would rather be in the detention center with my child than to have my child be alone. I would rather be with my child than be separated from my child.
Difficult. It's a difficult decision to have to be made, but it's a decision that many people are making right now, right? We're seeing things that I know in my lifetime I never thought I'd witness, but we are witnessing history. And again, we don't know which side history is going to fall on this, but we know that there's definitely two sides to everything that we're witnessing right now in real time.
Think about it. For the side that I take, someone else may say, but I have more than one child. So if I go with this child, who's at home looking after my other children, or who's going to take care of the responsibilities that I have at home, right? I have other people who rely on me, and I'm responsible for taking care of. So it's not so easy for me to make the decision, if I am here illegally, to just go and be with this child. There are always sides to everything. That's what we do at Break the Pipeline. We talk about what are the different sides, and just really honoring everybody's truth, because it's real. And hopefully some of the suggestions that we've offered, schools will actually implement. All of this is going to still help to break the pipeline, because the more we help our kids, the more we have protocols in place, the less you have kids who are out on the street doing crimes and basically going to jail.
Yes, I'm grateful that we're able to talk about this, Sauda, in a way that's without opinion, if you will, right? And giving people a forum to be able to listen and understand that there's a lot of issues going on at the same time that are not easily digested, if you will. So I'm glad that we have this forum to be able to enlighten some people that tune in. So thank you so much for spending this afternoon with us. And we are very grateful for you listening to our banter on this topic, which is a hot topic right now.
Yeah, and if you're in California, it might be morning, but either way, thank you. This is Break the Pipeline. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Our goal with this podcast is to show two opposing views of our society, and it's not necessarily our own opinions, but we do hope that our listeners can understand that there are serious issues and not everyone is on the same page all the time. And our hope is to bring it to the community at large.
So if you want real talk, compassion, and legal insight from attorneys who care deeply about our youth, you are in the right place. We're the law offices of Sauda Johnson, PC, and this is Break the Pipeline. All right, bye-bye.